Around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. So 24 thrones. These thrones were the ones that we just read from Daniel 7 that he saw that were being set in place. Daniel got there and they were setting up the place, the palace for the thrones to be set up, the for the people to sit and honor the Almighty, and then for eventually, as we are about to see, the Lamb to enter and open the book of life. So 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting. Many believe that these 24 would be the 12 fathers of the tribes and the 12 apostles. However, we already see the honor given to them, or the where they are mentioned in the New Jerusalem, the 12 apostles as the 12 foundations of the New Jerusalem, for their teachings are the foundations of the true congregation. Their teachings are the explanation of what Yahushua did and what Yahushua said. So they are the foundation of the New Jerusalem, while the 12 patriarchs, or the 12 fathers of the tribes, have their names on each of the 12 doors to the New Jerusalem, because they were all doors through which the 12 tribes came to this earth. So they both get their honor there. We go back to this verse then, and it says 24 elders. Also, Yahushua came to start everything again. He came as the last Adam. In fact, he said regarding John the Baptist that from all who were born of a female, there were none greater than John the Baptist. But him who would be the smaller, in the kingdom of Yahweh, would be greater than John the Baptist. So Yahushua came to start the kingdom of Yahweh through the spiritual, becoming himself the last Adam. So Yahushua was saying that John the Baptist was the last of those of the flesh. John the Baptist was the one who came to close the era of the flesh, starting with Adam, finishing with John the Baptist. Yahushua, who was born 6 months later, he would bring the beginning of the spirit. So everything would start all over again in scriptures, but now in a spiritual sense. They would fight giants. Now we fight other types of giants. We are in a spiritual fight against principalities, authorities, etc. So Yahushua came to start everything all over again. So anybody who would be the smaller in the kingdom of Yahweh through Yahushua, that one would be greater than the greatest of all men of the flesh. So that was a huge and important statement that Yahushua made right there. Since Yahushua came to start everything, then anybody who came before Yahushua, meaning those of the time of the flesh, to us would be elders, for they were from other time, and they would be elders even in the flesh, obviously, in comparison to Messiah, for they all came before Messiah himself, for they had to come to preach, to prophesy of Messiah. They would fit this category of 24 elders. However, we could say there were more prophets in the Old Testament than 24, and obviously that's true. But then when we read in the book of Thomas, or the Gospel of Thomas, which they took out of scriptures, so it's one of the Gnostic books. If you read that book, you will see that Yahushua was asked by his disciples, and regarding the prophets, he was told, well, they were trying to kind of appeal to the Almighty through words, and they were talking about they said the 24 prophets that spoke of you. 24 prophets that spoke of you. And then Messiah replies pretty much saying, you are thinking and speaking of the dead while you have life in front of you. So he was saying, why are you focusing on the past? By focusing on the past, you're not able to see what is happening at the moment, in the present, because they were thinking about the prophets instead of seeing the fulfillment of what the prophets said. something which the prophets would have loved to see. They were having the pleasure to see, yet they were going back to the prophets in their minds, only to please, according to their hearts, to their emotions, Yahushua. But that did not please Yahushua because he was seeing that part, and that's why he replied that way. But my point from this piece of scripture from the Gospel of Thomas is that they said that there were 24 prophets in Israel who spoke about the coming of Messiah. That's what, obviously, the whole thing I was paraphrasing. This right now is what it says, that there were 24 prophets in Israel who spoke of Messiah. So there were more prophets in Israel, of course, but there were 24 whose lives were focused on prophesying regarding the coming of Messiah. Other prophets, like Nathan or Nathan, the one that spoke to David, he doesn't appear giving prophecy regarding Messiah. For instance, he was a prophet, but he didn't live a book to tell us about Messiah. Abraham was a prophet, but he was not a son of Israel. So it says 24 in Israel who spoke of Messiah. So then we look for those 24, and actually I wrote the list in the book that you can, well, that part at least you can read already in our website, thewayofyahweh.org, thewayofyahweh.org, just like it is written right there, or like it's written right here. And then you go to the English part, and the book is called Declaring the End from the Beginning. In chapter 4 I mentioned the 24 names. In chapter 4 of the book, like I said, I'm not gonna mention, unless you guys want, each of the 24 prophets that would fit that requirement mentioned. And well, just because what I want to do has to do with the names, I'll mention the names. But as I have mentioned a lot of times, the Almighty gives us revelation in many ways. First is the literal. So if a verse has a name of a person, the literal sense is that there was a person named that who did whatever the verse is telling us. But in the spiritual sense, the meaning of the name gives us a deeper understanding to what the Almighty is saying to everybody through that person whose name happened to mean whatever it may mean. So the same happens with in this case, the names of the prophets. So I listed the 24 prophets who would fit that description of Thomas as 24 prophets in Israel who prophesied of Messiah. I included Israel because he is the father of Israel, and because he himself started prophesying about Messiah already. As we can see, for instance, not only that his life was an example of, but also when he spoke the blessings of Genesis 49, he prophesied the coming of Messiah, both first and last. So he would fit the description, since the description would start from him and would only have to do with prophets that spoke of Messiah. So Yaakov, who became Israel, Yaakov means supplanter, and Israel, he who contends with the mighty one, or he who will rule as mighty one. Moshe will be the second one, which means drawn from the water, as in resurrected, because water, in the sense of the baptism, for instance, represents death. So drawn from the water because they threw him in the water expecting the Almighty to save him, because they were throwing kids in the water to kill them. So they threw him in the water, but in a basket so that he wouldn't be drowned. So then Yahushua, known as Joshua, which means Yahweh saves or Yahweh salvation. Shemuel, which means his name is mighty, but also could be interpreted as heard by the mighty one. Heard by the mighty one. David means beloved. Shlomo, peace. Eliyahu, my mighty one is Yahweh. Elishua, my mighty one is salvation. Yeshayahu, known as Isaiah, Yahweh has saved. Yirmiyahu, known as Jeremiah, whom Yahweh designated. Yehezkel, whom Yahweh strengthens. Daniel, my judge, is the mighty one. Hoshea means salvation. Yoel, he is mighty. Amos means burden. Obadiah means servant of Yah. Yonah means dove. Micah, who is like Yahweh. Nahum, which means comfort or comfort. Habakkuk, which means embrace. Zephaniah, which means who Yah treasures or hides. Haggai or Hagi, my feast. Zechariah, whom Yahweh remembers. And Malachi, my messenger. Those will be the 24 prophets who spoke of Messiah, who came through Israel. And obviously, I don't doubt others would have other opinions regarding one or two, perhaps three of those names that could be replaced with other names. But taking these names, mainly the meanings of those names, and reading them as if it were a message, we would have, I'm just going to read the whole thing without saying the names. This is the message that we would get through the names of the prophets, the 24 prophets. The supplanter, and the fact that the name of Yaakov was supplanter, or he who takes the place of another by grabbing the heel, has to do with the fact that just like Seth was sent to substitute Abel, who was killed by Cain, Yaakov came to substitute Esav or Esau in order to take the birthright and all the things that we already know, the blessing from Yitzhak, his father, and everything. So supplanter had to do with the name that he was given because Yaakov, because when he came out of the womb, he was grabbing the heel of his brother. But that term, grabbing the heel, represented taking the place of another. So that's why his name is interpreted as supplanter. And that has to do with the fact that Messiah would come as first and last, as priest and king, to take over the earth and over all authorities and over principalities. So he would come and take over the God of this world. So that's why he has to come and supplant the God of this world. So the supplanter of the mighty one of this world will contend with Satan and will reign as the mighty one, after being resurrected and becoming he who causes salvation through his name that is powerful. The beloved who brings peace is my mighty one, Yahweh. My mighty one is salvation. So Yahweh has saved whom Yahweh designated. That first half would have to do with the first coming. Then this part has to do with the second coming, he who comes as the prodigal son. Yahweh has saved whom Yahweh designated, to whom Yahweh gives strength, for we can do all things through Messiah who strengthens us. So that's why the previous part said, my mighty one is salvation. Through Yahushua, he already gave salvation. Then Yahweh has saved whom Yahweh designated, to whom Yahweh gives strength. My judge is the mighty one of salvation. He is the mighty one who gives the burden to the servant of Yahweh, the dove, as the spirit of Messiah, which came on him when he was baptized by John, who is like Yahweh, who is a consolation and embraces those who are chosen and hides them during my feast, those whom Yahweh remembers, my messenger. So Yahweh, through his messenger, remembers the many and the few to gather them in the end times during the harvest, through the first and last, I repeat. Like I said, all of that is already written, so you can go and see it so that you may understand it a little bit better, because I went through it real fast, not to take that much time on it, because I know for some that may not make that much sense. So you can read that in, losdelcamino.net, as you see it right there. Then /declaring -the -n from declaring the end from the beginning, dash 4, as in chapter 4, in case you're having trouble finding it in the website.